All right, guys, I'm going to talk a little bit about um, one of the great, truly great rock bands of the last 25, 30 years, in my opinion, and that is Stone Temple Pilots. A underappreciated rock band for sure. When they first came out, they were accused of ripping off Pearl Jam, but I think they were around before Pearl Jam. I'm not quite sure on that, but uh, if you really listen to their songs, they really didn't sound anything like Pearl Jam. I mean, you can bring out the Eddie Vedder comparisons, Scott Weiland on Plush, etc. I get that. But other than that song, I mean, there were not a lot of Pearl Jam sounding ish songs in the arsenal. Stone Temple Pilots, to be completely honest with you, in my opinion, uh, they actually, of course, recently, a couple years ago now. Scott Weiland died in late 2015. Of course, one of the great frontmen of the last 25, 30 years as well. You can say what you want about him. Yeah, he cost them a lot. Um, no doubt about it. They were on the path of being one of the great rock bands in history uh, until Scott Weiland had all his problems, which is just a bummer. If you were a big STP fan like I was, they were set to break out, really break out. Do a tour with Kiss, and then Weiland had a relapse, and that kind of was the end, really, of Stone Temple Pilots as a mainstream talked about rock and roll band. After that, it kind of fell off. True fans, around the third album, Tiny Music Songs from the Vatican Gift Shop, which ironically, I think is their best album. That album is just incredible. What they did, how they changed their sound, and the mastery of that album. People say Purple, but that's simply the casual fan. Purple might be their favorite album. Core, of course, is up there, but really mastery of music and talent and overall depth. Uh, that would be Tiny Music, Songs from the Vatican Gift Shop. And I thought it was interesting that uh, one of the guys that really ragged on him, Billy Corgan, Smashing Pumpkins when they first came out, um, had this to say about Stone Temple Pilots. And when Scott Weiland died, actually, this is what he had to say. It was, I guess you'd say, my way of an apology for having been so critical of STP. This is what he said about Weiland after his death, about him being one of the great voices of that generation. They appeared on the scene like some crazy man-fueled rocket. And not only was the knight up front that Scott Weiland handsome to a fault, but he could sing too. As any supreme actor gives a real different voice to each character played, was STP's third album. That's Tiny Music that got Billy Corgan hooked. A wizardry mix of glam and post-punk. He confessed this to Scott Weiland as well as the band many times, how wrong he'd been in assessing their native brilliance. Now, this is Billy Corgan, not an easy guy to please. And like Bowie can and does, it was Scott's phrasing that pushed his music into a unique and hard to pin down aesthetic sonic sphere. Lastly, I'd like to share a thought, which, though clumsy, I hope would please Scott and Hominem. And that is, if you ask me who I truly believe was the great voices of our generation, I'd say it were Scott, Lane, and Kurt Cobain. You probably got to throw Eddie Vedder and you know, um, in there as well. Soundgarden frontman Chris Cornell. I mean, all five of those guys were just amazing. Billy Corgan was too. So I don't know. You really can't say one guy's better than the other. But Scott Weiland, maybe as a performer, overall was the best of all those guys. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And back to STP now. Core, they sold 40 million albums uh, in the worldwide, and since they became a band. Now you have to understand that they were on. I mean, these guys were not together a large part of the time. And if they'd have been together, they would have had a chance to maybe go down as one of the great rock bands in history. I mean, right up there. Took the line of like the Foo Fighters and become just a tremendous band because they stayed together and they made great music. STP was cursed by Weiland, uh, and kind of rock and roll kind of going a different direction, really away from uh, what it was, and they made the third album, and the third album really alienated a lot of the casual fans and really left them with just the diehard fans who were left that really understood that album. Because after that, everybody kind of went a different direction as far as the casual fan. But you cannot deny, if you listen to their albums, each one is different sounding. They're just incredibly diverse, each one from the other. And they're just so underrated in that regard. I mean, they never got the credit they deserved. Um, there's Chester Bennington, of course. He took over for Scott Weiland in Stone Temple Pilots as well. And here's what. So 40 million albums worldwide, 17.5 million in the United States. Uh, that was before 2003. And like I said, they didn't make music a lot of the time, and they weren't touring, so they were really blunted, and their growth was stunted by Scott Weiland's issues. So, and they also had 16 top 10 singles on the Billboard rock charts, 8 of which peaked at number one. Purple was a number one album. The same year, they won a Grammy for Best Hard Rock Performance for Plush. Uh, and they're also ranked number 40 in VH1's Top 100 Greatest Artists of Hard Rock. And I do think they would be higher if they would have stayed together. Now, most people don't understand, too, that Plush was not their biggest hit. That may be the song that the casual fan recognizes them for, but their biggest hit, I believe, is actually Interstate Love Song, which at the time, when it came out, spent 17 consecutive weeks at number one on the modern rock charts, I believe it was, which was a record at the time. And previously, Vaseline was number one, so they gave them 17 weeks on top of the charts. They were just a huge band in the early and mid 90s. They were gigantic. And then, of course, Scott Weiland had his issues. And I mean, there was no bigger rock star in the world than Scott Weiland. A lot of you guys probably don't remember them. When they were really huge, because this was kind of before the age of the internet. So, and digital downloads and all that other kind of garbage. Not garbage, but, it was all about selling records and at that point and shows and things like that, and not digital downloads. And rap started to get really huge, and a lot of young people got into rap and got out of rock and roll and grunge and stuff, which is really too bad. I'm just not a fan of that type of music, but a lot of people are. Doesn't mean it's bad music, but again, I just thought I'd do a uh, little video on these guys. Really, truly one of the great rock bands the last 25, 30 years. I don't think there's any denying that. People can hate on them all they want, but I mean, this is a band that you can turn on any rock station in the country, and probably within an hour and a half, 2 hours, you're going to hear one of their songs. I mean, they were just that popular, and their songs are just that good when they were making music anyway. Back before Weiland's problems, it's just a shame that they couldn't really mature into what they could have been. And I feel bad for the rest of the members of STP who, are out looking for a new singer right now. But, everybody can tell you, you can't replace Scott Weiland. I mean, unfortunately, he's just one of those guys that you just can't replace. And it's really a sad thing for the rest of the guys in STP. But, I've seen them numerous times. They are incredible live. One of the truly best bands live, at least with Scott at the helm anyway. It's just, they were just so good, and it's a shame that it had to happen. Chester Bennington, not Linkin Park guy, not really my kind of music too much, but he was a huge STP fan. STP was a big influence on a lot of people. Um, and Bennington quit because it made his kids cry when he had to leave and go tour, and that's pretty awesome to hear, that he did it for his kids. But this guy might be the new lead singer. Man, I hope not. That's this James Goot, whatever his name is. Let's hope not. I mean, whatever. But yeah, it's really a sad thing that a lot of people really never got to see them at full force and really, what they were capable of. Weiland died, of course, a couple years ago in 2015 of a drug overdose, like a deadly mix of drugs, which is not a surprise. I mean, it's surprising it didn't happen sooner. The guy threw away so much and had so much ability. It's really a shame, uh, that had to happen to him. So in the beginning, they actually were known as Shirley Temple's Pussy for a while. I thought that was pretty funny. Then they went on as Stereo Temple Pirates. Eventually, they settled on Stone Temple Pilots. But yeah, pretty neat stuff. When you read back about their history, actually, if you're a fan, made some great music. Really a shame what happened to the band due to Scott Weiland, but hopefully they can make some more great music.